2010s were littered with guys who were supposed to be the answer.
The way that I played quarterback was just a different kind of football.
They couldn't stop it.
He transcended college football and also sport.
The franchise changers, the generational talents, the ones teams staked their entire future on.
This is a moment that I've dreamed about since I've been a kid.
He's not a competent quarterback, guys.
Some had the arm, some had the legs, some had the Heisman. And almost all of them had one thing in common. They never came close to living up to what was expected of them. These are the 10 biggest quarterback busts of the 2010s.
What?
Let's get started with Blaine Gabbert. The Jaguars had been to the playoffs just twice in the previous decade and desperately needed a quarterback to build around. Gabbert, out of Missouri, stood 6 feet 4 inches, 235 pounds, a strong arm, and legitimate dual threat ability.
I think the guy's got big-time talent, but I still think he's got a long way to go.
In his junior season at Mizzou, he threw for 2,717 yards and showed the kind of deep ball that made scouts salivate. In the 2011 draft, Jacksonville was so convinced he was their guy.
In the 2011 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Blaine Gabbert, quarterback, Missouri.
That they traded up from 16th to 10th overall to make sure nobody else got there first. Missouri ran a spread offense built around quick throws and easy reads. Critics called Gabbert a system quarterback from the jump. There were also serious questions about his toughness in the pocket, whether or not he could hold up mentally and physically when faced with NFL-caliber pass rushers closing in on him. Those concerns were confirmed almost immediately. The footwork in the pocket broke down under pressure exactly as expected. Gabbert went 5-22 as a starter in Jacksonville. He averaged under 6.5 yards per attempt in each of his 2 seasons, threw 24 touchdowns against 24 interceptions, and was eventually benched in favor of Chad Henne. Yes, the Chad Henne. His 61.6 passer rating in 2011 was the worst among all qualified starters that year. The Jaguars cut him after the 2013 season. He then signed with San Francisco, where the 49ers had stumbled to a 3-9 start, and he was benched again, this time for Colin Kaepernick. Gabbert spent the remainder of his career as a nomadic backup, cycling through Arizona, Tennessee, San Fran, and Tampa Bay without ever reclaiming a starting role. His career win percentage as a starter ranks among the worst in modern NFL history. The Jaguars learned nothing from this experience, as we'll be revisiting them very shortly. At least Gabbert played 2 full seasons before the Jaguars pulled the plug. The next guy on this list never even got that. E.J. Manuel. The first quarterback taken off the board in the 2013 NFL Draft, and the only one taken in the first round. The Bills were starving, and Manuel was to fill that hunger.
With the 16th pick in the 2013 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select E.J. Manuel, quarterback, Florida State.
They had not drafted a quarterback in the first round since 1979. Manuel, out of Florida State, was 6 feet 5 inches, athletic, possessed a big arm, and looked like the foundational piece of franchise that had cycled through Trent Edwards, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and J.P. Losman desperately needed. He was the first quarterback taken, but not everyone agreed he should have been. Many analysts had Geno Smith ranked ahead of him heading into draft weekend. Manuel's completion percentage at Florida State sat in the mid-60s, and his footwork under pressure drew scrutiny. The Bills saw the size, saw the arm, and decided the rest was coachable. Injuries intervened almost immediately. Manuel missed time early in his rookie year, and when he was on the field, the inconsistency was glaring. He was benched early in year 2. In those 2 seasons, he went 6-8 as a starter, threw just 16 touchdowns with 12 interceptions, and never gave the Buffalo offense anything to build on. The team eventually signed Kyle Orton off the street to take his job. Manuel left the Bills for the Raiders as a free agent after the 2016 season, and he only started 1 more NFL game. He retired in 2018, having completed his NFL career as a footnote, a first-round pick that most fans outside of Buffalo have already forgotten entirely. He is quite the bust, the one nobody argues about anymore, because nobody really remembers him. Manuel represents the bust nobody talks about. The next guy represents the bust that should have never happened at all, because the team that drafted him had every reason to know better. The Broncos had just won Super Bowl 50. Peyton Manning walked away. The defense was loaded, and the team needed someone to hand the baton to without losing a step. John Elway thought he had found his answer in Paxton Lynch, a 6'7" cannon-armed prospect out of Memphis who had thrown for nearly 3,000 yards and 21 touchdowns in his senior season and moved with the kind of athleticism that made evaluators believe they were looking at a franchise cornerstone. In the 2016 draft, Elway took him 26th overall.
With the 26th pick in the 2016 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Paxton Lynch, quarterback, Memphis.
Convinced Denver was set at the most important position in sports. Memphis is in the AAC. The athletes Lynch faced every Saturday were nowhere near the ones waiting for him in the NFL. His footwork broke down on a regular basis. His decision-making under pressure was shaky, and most draft analysts had him penciled in as a second or third round grade. Elway reached badly. Lynch made 4 starts over 2 seasons and went 1-3. He threw 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, but looked completely lost against NFL defensive schemes, missing routine throws and freezing against any kind of blitz. Trevor Siemian, a 7th-round pick, quickly beat him out for the starting job. Brock Osweiler, who had fled Denver for a massive payday in Houston, failed spectacularly, and returned on a cut-rate deal, also outperformed him. A shoulder injury in the 2017 preseason ended whatever hope remained. Denver cut Lynch after the 2017 season. He signed with Seattle and never took another NFL snap. He attempted a comeback in the Canadian Football League and got nowhere. His complete NFL ledger: 4 starts, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 win. The Broncos spent the next 6 years cycling through desperate quarterback solutions before trading for Russell Wilson, who then became his own kind of disaster. Lynch was a bad decision from the start, and Denver paid for it. However, this next entry isn't about a bad decision. This is about a great player who never got the chance to become what he was supposed to be. Robert Griffin III was electric in a way that felt different from everything else happening at the position. That's why this one genuinely hurts. Washington traded 4 picks, including 2 first-rounders, to move up from 6th to 2nd overall and take the Heisman Trophy winner out of Baylor. His rookie season was legitimately one of the most exciting in recent memory. In 2012, RG3 threw for 3,200 yards, added 815 yards on the ground, and beat out Andrew Luck, the first overall pick for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He and Kyle Shanahan rewrote how the read option could work in the NFL and gave Washington its most thrilling football in a generation. The read option is a violent way to make a living. Griffin took hits he didn't have to take, threw his body into situations that made coaches wince, but the quiet concern about durability got buried under the highlight reel. Week 14 of his rookie year, Griffin suffered a knee injury at the hands of Ravens defensive tackle Haloti Ngata. He came back too soon. Head coach Mike Shanahan played him despite questions about clearance from team doctor James Andrews. Then, in the wildcard game against Seattle, Griffin chased a bad snap in the 4th quarter and his leg gave out. He tore both his ACL and LCL on national television. The franchise never fully recovered. His relationship with the coaching staff deteriorated. He came back physically diminished, was eventually replaced by Kirk Cousins, and was never the quarterback he had been in that first season. He signed with Cleveland in 2016 and was cut after 1 year. He finished his playing career as Lamar Jackson's backup in Baltimore, which, depending on your perspective, is either poetic or heartbreaking. Griffin belongs on this list, but his entry carries a different weight than the others. This wasn't a bad player who got exposed. This was a great player whose career was derailed by injuries and circumstances beyond his control. It is the one story on this list where you genuinely wonder what could have been. The next player had some injury problems of his own. But the bigger issue was something that showed up in the wins and losses column, not the medical report. Marcus Mariota, the 2014 Heisman Trophy winner out of Oregon, was everything the pre-draft process celebrates. He was 6 feet 4 inches, fast enough to make defenses account for him everywhere on the field, and accurate enough to pick apart secondaries with his arm. At Oregon, he threw 42 touchdowns, rushing for 15 more, all while only throwing 4 interceptions. So it was no surprise when the Titans had the 2nd overall pick. Jameis Winston went first to Tampa, and they selected Mariota as the cornerstone of their rebuild. Mariota had spent his entire college career in Chip Kelly's spread offense, short throws, designed runs, minimal pre-snap processing. He had never operated from under center or been asked to make the complex reads that define success at the NFL level. The concern was that the system, not the player, had been doing the heavy lifting in Eugene. 5 seasons in Tennessee, 29 wins and 32 losses. He had a body that seemed to be held together with tape and optimism. Broken fibula, elbow nerve damage, hamstring issues, rib fractures, a knee scope. When healthy, he was serviceable, occasionally better than that. But the Titans eventually brought in Ryan Tannehill as a backup. Tannehill outplayed Mariota in training camp, took his starting job, and led Tennessee to the divisional round of the playoffs in his very first season starting. That sequence said everything. Mariota signed with the Raiders as a backup before earning a starting job with Atlanta in 2022. He went 5-8 and was replaced by Desmond Ridder. He signed with Philadelphia the following year as a backup. The gap between what Tennessee expected from the second pick of the 2015 draft and what they received remains one of the wider chasms in draft history. Somehow, no team in the 2010s made the same mistake twice, quite like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, Jacksonville again. Lightning does strike twice apparently, especially when you keep standing in the same spot. After the Gabbert disaster, the Jaguars found themselves back in the top 3 of the draft, and this time they had a premium prospect, Blake Bortles out of UCF, 6 feet 5 inches with a massive arm and 50 combined touchdowns across his last 2 college seasons. The thinking was simple. No more reaching, no more settling, no more system quarterbacks. This time, the Jaguars were getting it right. UCF was not playing the competition level that NFL scouts should be extrapolating from. Bortles also had chronic accuracy issues on intermediate routes, and his mechanics had a tendency to unravel when defenses brought pressure. The arm talent was real. Almost everything surrounding it was not. Bortles went 24-51 as a starter. He threw 88 touchdowns against 74 interceptions over 5 seasons and was the kind of quarterback who always seemed one big mistake away from a loss. His 2017 season looked like a breakthrough. He led Jacksonville to the AFC Championship game, but that team had one of the most dominant defenses in recent memory, and Bortles was, at best, along for the ride. He was sacked 55 times that season and averaged under 7 yards per attempt. Once the defense declined, the offense had nothing to stand on, and everyone could see it clearly. Jacksonville released him after 2018. He signed with the Rams as a backup and had brief stints with Green Bay, Denver, and New Orleans before retiring in 2022. At least Bortles got to make 86 starts before the team that drafted him closed the curtain. The next guy on this list made far fewer and made them far more memorable, for all the wrong reasons. Sam Darnold was 20 years old and already looked like the finished product. 2 seasons at USC had produced 57 touchdowns and a swagger that made every team in the top 5 believe they were watching a franchise quarterback. The Jets traded 3 second-round picks to move up and secure the 3rd overall selection. He was the face of one of the most anticipated quarterback classes in recent memory, a class that also included Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. For a Jets franchise that had been wandering in the wilderness for decades, Darnold looked like the exit ramp.
With the 3rd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Sam Darnold, quarterback, USC.
2 collegiate seasons is a thin sample. USC's system leaned heavily on screens, quick throws, and easy reads, the kind of design that masks processing concerns that show up very quickly against NFL defensive coordinators. His Monday night debut in Detroit opened with a pick 6 on his very first pass. That turned out to be remarkably on brand. He contracted mono in his 2nd season, which generated one of the more memorable ESPN news tickers in recent memory. During a nationally televised Monday night loss to the Patriots, he was caught on a hot mic saying he was seeing ghosts as Bill Belichick blitzed him into the ground. He finished his Jets career 13-25 with 39 interceptions. New York traded Darnold to Carolina for a package of picks they used to draft Zach Wilson, who promptly became his own entry in the next decade's version of this list. Darnold bounced to San Francisco as Brock Purdy's backup, then landed in Minnesota, where, in 2024, he had the best season of his career, won the Comeback Player of the Year award, and got paid by the Seahawks after the Vikings let him walk. The seeing ghosts line will follow him forever. Although those ghosts are much quieter after his Super Bowl run, that is simply the reality of playing in New York. Many say Darnold got a fair shake, with 38 starts in New York before they moved on. The next player in this class, a player many thought was the most talented of all 4, got exactly 10. Same class as Darnold and Lamar. Same class as Baker and Allen. Entering the draft, many analysts considered Josh Rosen the most polished, most pro-ready passer of all four. The mechanics were clean. The football intelligence was evident. He had produced 57 touchdowns across 2 seasons at UCLA and showed the kind of pocket presence and anticipation that does not always show up in college quarterbacks. The Cardinals took him 10th overall and told their fan base the search was over. Rosen was openly ambivalent about football. He spoke candidly in interviews about his interests outside the game, science, economics, the wider world, and it made teams nervous at the pre-draft meetings. Was he hungry enough? Did he want it the way franchises need their quarterbacks to want it? Arizona moved forward anyway, believing the talent outweighed the concerns. He went 3-10 as a starter behind one of the worst offensive lines on one of the worst teams in the league, throwing 11 touchdowns and 14 interceptions in a season that was ugly from start to finish. Bad as that was, what came next was worse. Arizona fired Steve Wilks, hired Cliff Kingsbury, and Kingsbury had one request: he wanted his own quarterback. With the first pick of the 2019 draft, the Cardinals selected Kyler Murray. 1 year into his career, Rosen was done in Arizona. They traded him to Miami for a second-round pick and a 5th, pennies on the dollar for a first-round starter. Miami started him 3 times. He went 0-3, threw 3 interceptions, and was sacked 12 times. Cut in 2020, a brief stint as Matt Ryan's backup in Atlanta followed. Then nothing. Of the 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of the 2018 draft, Rosen is the only one who never found a permanent home. Mayfield, Darnold, Allen, and Jackson are all starting in the NFL as of 2025. Rosen has not been on an NFL roster since 2021. He was out of the league before his 27th birthday. Rosen's story is painful because circumstances conspired against him in ways that were not entirely in his control. A bad team, a coaching change, a new regime with a new quarterback in mind. The next guy on this list had no such excuses. His team traded up to get him. They built around him. They gave him every chance, and he still couldn't do it. General manager Ryan Pace had spent years as a Saints executive. He saw Drew Brees every day. He watched what elite quarterback play did for a franchise. And when he evaluated Mitch Trubisky, 6 feet 2 inches, 220 pounds, a 4.67 40, 35 total touchdowns in his 1 season as a starter at North Carolina, Pace convinced himself he was looking at something similar. He was so convinced that he traded 4 picks to the 49ers to move up a single spot from 3rd to 2nd overall in the 2017 draft. 1 season as a starter. Yep, just 1. The questions about his football IQ and his ability to process at the NFL level were not quiet concerns. They were widely discussed heading into the draft. His leadership was questioned. His mental processing was questioned. These were treated as acceptable risks on a player with his physical tools. The Bears coaching staff reportedly knew within days of getting him in the building that he was not ready. He sat the bench to start his rookie season before replacing Mike Glennon, then threw as many interceptions as touchdowns in 12 starts, which led to head coach John Fox being shown the door. Then Matt Nagy came in from Kansas City, where he had been part of the staff that developed a quarterback named Patrick Mahomes, who went 10th overall in that same 2017 draft, 8 spots after Trubisky. Nagy got more out of Trubisky, but never matched the expectations of the Windy City. Chicago declined his 5th-year option. His Bears career ended with a wild-card loss to the Saints. He backed up Josh Allen in Buffalo for a season, then went 6-5 as a starter in Pittsburgh before being replaced mid-season by rookie Kenny Pickett. He is currently without a starting job in the NFL. For class comparison, Patrick Mahomes, who went after Trubisky, has 3 Super Bowl rings. Deshaun Watson had multiple Pro Bowl seasons as well. The trade-up will haunt the Bears organization for a very long time. At least Trubisky gave Chicago 4 years before the wheels fell off. The number 1 bust of the 2010s barely gave his team a year and a half before the whole thing fell apart, and then fell further apart after that. This is the one everyone remembers, the one that still doesn't quite feel real. In 2012, Johnny Manziel became the first freshman in the history of college football to win the Heisman Trophy. At Texas A&M, he was genuinely unlike anything anyone had seen, improvising out of broken plays, making throws that had no business being attempted, let alone completed, carrying an entire program into national relevance on pure will and instinct. He was the most entertaining college football player of his generation, and when he left College Station after the 2013 season, every NFL franchise noticed. The Cleveland Browns were coming off 6 straight losing seasons and had an extra first-round pick in their back pocket from the Trent Richardson trade. They needed a spark, they needed a name, they needed someone who could make the city believe again. The name was the Red Flag. By the time Johnny Football declared for the draft, he was already a celebrity, photographed at every party, courtside at NBA games, spending money he had not earned yet, and flashing the money fingers gesture that became both his calling card and his cautionary tale. The question was never whether he could play football. The question was whether he wanted to. Cleveland moved up 4 spots to take him 22nd overall.
With the 22nd pick, the Cleveland Browns select Johnny Manziel, quarterback, Texas A&M.
He started 8 games, went 2-6, threw 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and was reportedly spotted in a Las Vegas casino the night before a game. His agent dropped him as a client in February of 2016. The Browns released him the following month. The most damning detail of all came later in a 2023 Netflix documentary, where one of his coaches confirmed that Manziel's film study hours with the Browns were logged at 0. Not low, not minimal, literally 0.0. The most important learning tool in professional football, and he never touched it. A CFL comeback attempt in 2018 produced little evidence that football was ever truly a priority. His post-NFL years were defined by addiction, depression, and the kind of slow public unraveling that is genuinely difficult to watch. He has spoken openly about those years with remarkable honesty and appears to have found stability since. But the football career is what it is. 14 games, a 57% completion rate, a 74.4 passer rating, and a 2-6 record as a starter. For a franchise that traded up to grab the most famous quarterback in college football, using a pick they received for Trent Richardson, a player they had traded up for 2 years earlier, it was a disaster of almost perfect proportions. And somehow, the Browns still had to show up and draft again the following year. The quarterback position is unforgiving. Get it right, and you are set for a decade. Get it wrong, and you spend years rebuilding what you broke. Every team on this list paid that price. Some are still paying it. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more of the best NFL content, be sure to like and subscribe.